Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy MKS here, back in another video. I've been thinking about this video for a while, but I didn't quite get around to doing it yesterday. But basically, it's about Italian football teams and the Celtic FC Foundation, Italian teams foundations and Celtics foundations. And I hope for all Italian teams, football teams, to have their own foundations and things like that if they don't already do so. The ones that don't do so, I hope will do so. And I want to talk about some of the things that I hope for such foundations to possibly work together to fundraise for and to support. So hope you enjoyed this video, and as ever, I would love to hear what you think and what causes you think are worth supporting. I did want to get around to say to this video yesterday, but I didn't quite get around to it. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to do so. So anyway, it goes. As ever, again, I would love to hear your thoughts. So number one, I think it would be good if Italian football and Celtic foundations fundraised for things that would come back to benefit the club as well. So it'd be like a mutual benefit. So like football academies for disadvantaged people in Italy and in Glasgow and across Celtic in Glasgow and across Scotland and even around the world, that would benefit Italian teams and Celtic. But also, especially in Italian football's case, as I support the national team as well, I would love for them to fundraise for football academies for disadvantaged people, especially in Italy as well, and maybe even like Italian football and Celtic to work together on that goal. Number two, I hope they will fundraise for education for people from what I call the six. So I know I've mentioned this before, but just for any new viewers, please forgive me for old viewers if I'm repeating myself, but as I often do, one of my bad habits. But I would love for Italian football teams and Celtic, as I say, the foundations, to fundraise for indigenous people from Australasia, Africa, the Americas, especially in September, like the Americas in July, August and September, like basically Native Americans and people like that, and also people from across Asia, Latin America and Ireland, but also to have academies and things like that around the world, and things like supporting education for girls in those places. I talk about basically in developing countries or former colonies, both possibly, and hopefully that will benefit Italian football clubs because they'll have support from those countries. So I hope they'll have supporters clubs and academies in those countries that I hope to come to, but also, as I say, fundraise for their education of their people, as well as get them into academies so they can improve their football, improve their diets, but also improve them in education, like support their education, like in STEM, science, tech, engineering, and maths, and things like that. Number three, to promote liberty, libertarianism, human rights, and things like that around the world. I suppose I'm going on things that I support myself. So again, I'd love to hear from other Italian football and Celtic fans, or people generally as well, obviously, or welcome to put forward your 2 cents, as they say. But because I support libertarianism, I would love for them to support libertarianism as well. Although I know a lot of Celtic fans are socialists or even communists, possibly, but I would love to support libertarianism, and I'd love to see tax exemptions for Italian teams and Celtic as well. So hopefully they'll be able to use that money that they save in tax to reinvest in helping tackle poverty, so to put it to good use, which arguably is what tax should be paid for. So instead of paying taxes, they'll use that for charities that actually target, so it doesn't go towards things like wars or weapons trade or things like that. Number four, also to have football academies in Eurasian, other transcontinental, Middle Eastern and Mediterranean nations, as well as around the world, as I say. And I dream for those 4 regions: Eurasian, transcontinental generally, which I class separately, but especially Eurasian, but also transcontinental generally, Middle Eastern and Mediterranean nations to be like military neutral, like the Swiss, and in Italy's case, to do so for football, like the Swiss, normally people put their money in those bank accounts, where the Swiss normally stay neutral in wars, so that money's safe, hopefully in Switzerland in their case, or they would hope, obviously. The wealthy people, the elites, or the wealthy people, or whatever you want to call them. And I hope for Italy to do that in football, so people would invest in Italian football teams. But I'd love for Italy, as well as other Mediterranean and Middle Eastern, and as well as other Mediterranean nations, and also Mid-Eastern, Eurasian, and transcontinental countries to be pacifist countries. And on that note, also, I'd love for Italian football and Celtic to fundraise for peace and talk about diplomacy and peace instead of wars and violence and things like that. Number 5, also, as I say, for things that will benefit the club, like having supporters clubs, sports trusts, and all sorts of things like that. And I hope for celebrity fans of Italian teams and Celtic, as well as general Italians themselves and Celts, to invest in their local team. In Celtic's case, I know I'm covering them both, but in Celtic's case, I hope they will donate, like fans to donate maybe even 10% of their salary or wage or even wealth or assets, maybe I'm pushing it, but or whatever they're comfortable with, 1% or even 10% or even higher perhaps, of their money towards things like academies in Glasgow and across Scotland and around the world, for Italian football, and Celtic for Celtic and Italian teams fans to do the same, like Roma fans, for instance, to donate to Roma so they can buy academies in Rome and across Italy and around the world as well. And again, Juventus fans do the same, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's another dream of mine. Number 6, I hope for, I'll say, celebrity fans to donate their own, like say former players like Henrik Larsson, and people like Wayne Rooney, who's apparently an Italian the Celtic fan, sorry, people like that. And obviously, as I say, in case of Italian teams like Inter or AC Milan or Juventus or whatever, Roma and so on and so forth, to donate to, so that their club can buy, again, can invest in like building sports clubs and connecting with fans around the world, and like having sports clubs again in developing countries and around the world, in Latin America and elsewhere, and as I say, academies and that sort of thing, so there'll be a mutual benefit, or benefit people in those countries and Italian football, hopefully, in the short and the long term. And also, yeah, so like I say, like apparently Snoop Dogg is a Celtic fan, so it'd be great if he invested in or donated to the club to have like, or bought shares in the club. People like Conor McGregor, who was going to buy, he said he was going to buy Celtic. Sorry, if he invested in like in shares in the club, also like helped, maybe even donated like a centre for an academy, like even gave the club money to buy a centre for its academies and things like that. So yeah, I'd love to see fans put their money where their mouth is, again, for Italian teams and Celtic, and I'd love to see as many sponsors, investors, sponsors, partners, and that sort of thing investing in the club. Number 7, I would love for Italian clubs and Celtic respectively to have their own accounts, maybe even a joint account with, so the more money they put in, hopefully they'll get favourable interest rates from banks, as well as like investment, but that money will be earmarked. It'll be like a shell or holding company. I know I'm a bit naive on this, but this is like a quirky idea of mine, as I often come up with, as you can probably tell. But yeah, I'd love for them to have like their own this account, which whatever money goes into there would be used. 10% of it would go towards investing in like sports clubs around the world, like encouraging, like basically marketing and branding and things like that. 10% would go towards investing in academies, and 10% onto any other costs the club has, including the foundation and the charitable work it does, or they do in Italian football club's case. And maybe like the Italian FA can work with all the football clubs in Italy as well as the national team to ensure they do a lot of charitable and philanthropic work and improve relations with the rest of the world through football, including, I would say, developing countries. I'm not really good at counting, so I forgot if that was 6 or 7. I can't even count properly. But yeah, moving on. Number 8, again, I would love to see them improving relations between Italians and the rest of the world through football, including tackling prejudice and things like that, and using money through the foundation. And as I say, Celtic to also donate to, I think normally Celtic as a club stands against racism, so I hope they'll continue to do that work and work with organisations like Kick It Out and anti-racism charities, and just charities generally and NGOs and things like that, and support tackling prejudice, especially extremism and racism and extreme racism and things like that, or tackling prejudice generally in the game. Number 9, I hope they'll support things like artists, poets, authors, artists, and things like that around the world. And again, projects across Asia and Africa and Ireland, and what I call the 6 generally, which I mentioned before, in point number 2. But yeah, I hope they'll support people like that in developing countries, and also architectural projects. And again, like support those countries and their entrepreneurs and their architects and architectural projects and their governments, and hopefully those will in return invest in Italian football. So I hope they'll have that partnership. And again, similar for Celtic. Number 10, supporting young people around the world as well. And I hope you enjoyed this video, as I say. I know I often get nervous in these videos, or I forget ideas and it doesn't come out quite the way I planned it in my head. But anyway, as I say, I hope you enjoyed this video and let me know what you think, please. And I'm out. Peace out.